I want to share with you a vision that can explain all the craziness that we are experiencing with the current opiate crisis, and yet explain our roles within this troubled time. Give me 5 minutes, and I promise you'll never look at the opiate crisis the same again. I want to give you hope so that you know how to overcome this crisis as a team. Healthcare providers across the entire continuum have expressed feelings of hopelessness, emotional and physical exhaustion, along with thoughts of ambiguity towards the current opiate crisis. This says to me, we simply do not know how to feel about the crisis and those who are at risk. Let's imagine a beautiful, large, swift river. One day, I was walking the shores of this river. I saw a young woman drowning in the water. I got in the river and pulled her onto the shore, performed CPR, and she was quickly revived. I called for a squad and she was admitted into the hospital where she fared well. The next week, I went down to the river again and saw 3 more people drowning in the swift current. I quickly rescued one of the people and did CPR and laid them on the shore. I grabbed the second person and knew right away that they were beyond saving, but laid them on the shore. By the time I got to the third person, I knew they too did not make it. I called for an ambulance for the first person, and they were admitted and fared well. Finally, I went down to the river another time, interested as to what I would find. I found yet another person in the swift current. As I reached in to save this person, this time I looked upstream and saw what appeared to be hundreds and hundreds of more people coming downstream by this swift current. I became overwhelmed, and I was unable to even fathom what was happening. I pulled out as many people as I could. The shore was piling up with deceased people. However, as quickly as I could save one person, they would wander back into the river as I was trying to save someone else. Needless to say, I went into a state of despair. I sat on the shore with my face in my hands, sobbing, wanting so desperately to save everyone, because after all, that's what I'm meant to do. Knowing that I just couldn't sit on the shore's edge and watch people drown, I got into the river and looked upstream to figure out where on earth all these people were coming from. Then I saw it. There was a bridge upstream, but it was extremely broken. The bridge had a large hole right in the middle of it. I found out the only way people could pass over this bridge was in the dark, and there was no one to lead them across. Hundreds and hundreds of people were falling into the river. Some were strong enough to overcome the swift current and knew how to swim, while others were brought under by the current. They couldn't rely on those in the river to help them because they too were fighting to survive. There were people along the river trying to pull people out, but oftentimes the person couldn't hold on and fell back into the river. All these people had one thing in common. They had to cross this bridge, which represents opiates. Some made it across safely, but the majority of those who fell in were young males whose brains weren't developed yet to understand the risk of crossing that bridge. Up until now, we've been good at saving lives, but we haven't been changing lives. This has been where the exhaustive frustration lies. But this is also where I find hope. We're starting to fix the bridge. We can encourage people to hold on to the right side of the bridge for safety, and we can meet them on the other side. We are now even starting to limit the number of people who even have to cross the bridge. You see, as more and more efforts are made to decrease the use of this bridge, educating those who use the bridge, and giving life-saving equipment to those who need to cross, we can then decrease the number of people being brought downstream by this current. So as less and less people enter the river, eventually there'll be less people entering our doors in a state of overdose. But this takes time. We did not get here overnight, so it'll take a while to notice a large change. But in the meantime, we need to detect those who need help and give them life-saving devices until someone else can help them, or they reach a place in the river they can get out. Imagine if that was your son, your daughter, your husband, or your wife. Wouldn't you want someone to give them something, anything to keep them alive, to help them until they reached that place in the river where they could get out? There is a final place in the river, however, that's actually more deadly than the first part of the river. This part of the river appears quite calm. Often, those who are weak, the elderly, people with COPD, enter this part of the river thinking they are okay. They enter the river and have a bad day with pain and take an extra dose or two, wanting to get rid of the pain but not realizing the consequences. What they didn't know, because no one ever told them, is that this place is very slippery. Half of everyone that crosses will slip. Unfortunately, there is a very steep drop-off with whitewater rapids just downstream. Of those who slip and fall, most of them will not make it through these rapids. Imagine if someone would have screened them for their wrists and given them a life-saving device, for their chances of survival would have gone up tremendously. So the next time you find yourself feeling overwhelmed with the current opiate crisis, look upstream. Remember, it is the bridge that is broken, not the people. The people are in the need of help. Many want to get out of the river and often wish they had never entered. Know that while you are decreasing risk and saving lives, others are working on mending the horribly broken bridge and forming guidelines to limit the use of the bridge. In the meantime, continue to screen people at risk for overdose. Give life-saving devices such as the Naloxone kits to those who are drowning and at risk of drowning. Most of all, encourage those who have found themselves in the river and need someone to care as if they are someone's family member. Chances are you have a family member currently drowning. Let's all care enough to not leave our patients without a second chance.